Here we go. Oh. God! You do this to me every week.
Yeah,
I think only one of us enjoys it. Probably you. Woo!
that one. Good morning to everybody watching us and to you, Timothy, on the other side of Tokyo Bay in Katsuyama, I believe, on your boat, beautiful boat. And thank you very much for joining us this morning. This is March 15th and, the 266th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One with Timothy Langley, CEO of Langley Esquire, the longest standing government relations consultancy here in Tokyo, and me as a host, Maya Matsuoka. Thank you very much for preparing, Timothy, to let us know what happened in Japanese politics during the past week,
You're
because
assuming a lot.
assuming a lot, okay, sorry for that. You were supposed to prepare. Okay. Yes, because it's a very dynamic period, very dynamic time indeed for Japan and for the world as well. And Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has been very busy. The government has been very busy as well with policy making and internal party dynamics, and also inter-party dynamics as well. So, Timothy, what are we going to hear from you today?
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us, Japan Hands, and those of you who are interested in what's going on in Japanese politics. We're in our 6th year of producing this briefing for you every Sunday morning at 8:20. I talk for about maybe 30 minutes, 35 minutes sometimes, and then we get into the beef of it, which is the Q&A. So throughout my briefing, if you have questions or issues or you want to talk about something, please flag that to Maya's attention. I'm reporting from the lip of Chiba Bay, as I almost always do, today from below decks because it's a little bit chilly outside. Yesterday and today, you could actually see your breath a little bit. I can see my breath coming out now. The sun is up. It's a beautiful sky. You can see Mount Fuji very crisply. I don't know if you saw that or you can see that from where you are in Tokyo, Maya, but it's a great time of the year. But it is a little bit chilly, and it will warm up gradually now. The meteorological agency has announced, so it's got its hunko on it, that spring will start on Friday, which is also interestingly the day that Sanae Takaichi will be visiting with President Trump. But there's a lot going on there. Spring is in the air. It's a vernal equinox on Friday. So of course it's got to be a national holiday. So this week that we're moving into, Maya, is a 4-day weekend, a 4-day week, and then it's a 3-day weekend starting on Friday. So there are a couple of things that are going on. I can't touch on everything. Maybe we roll that over to the Q&A, but I want to hit the top spots because there is so much that's going on. And you might notice that of course, Maya, you notice it because I was a little bit tardy in signing up today. I'm in day 8 of my 10-day detox, right?
Mm,
So
right.
that's when I absolve from salt, sugars, beer, all of my bad habits. I go into a detox. I take a sauna, a lengthy sauna every night. It's not particularly enjoyable, but it's a process that I go through twice a year. It does have a little bit of an impact, and it's unavoidable. When we do a briefing once a week, it's going to happen at least twice a year. So thank you for bearing with me. But politics this week has almost been as excruciating and as exhausting, especially if you're the prime minister. Can you imagine what she's going through? And she has displayed a little bit of I don't know, a, a diminishment in her temper and her demeanor. You can see it a little bit. She canceled a dinner that she had on Wednesday night. She was supposed to be there, a very important dinner inside the Conte where she was the host. Um, she's struggling with passing the budget on Friday, which she was successful in doing without taking. Um, well, she did take a couple of hits. The yen has breached 159. We here today, Maya. Last week we were talking about the yen being at 152. That was the day after we had heard the news about the attack on Iran and things going on there with the Hormuz Strait. The yen now is at 159. It is breaching, it is touching 160. It could go to 160. 160 seems to be the trigger point when the Japanese Bank of Japan, the finance ministry, the prime minister's office get really nervous and they start thinking about intervention. There's been some discussions about that this week, not just here in Tokyo, but also cross-border. The finance minister was speaking with the United States, the Treasury officials there, on what we're doing with the yen and how to stabilize that. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on for this prime minister. I think this visit in to Washington, D.C., today is Monday. I'm sorry, tomorrow is Monday. That's when the upper house will review the budget that was passed from the lower house. They have 2 weeks to review it. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The prime minister, Friday's a national holiday. The prime minister leaves on Wednesday for the United States. And for international travelers, when you travel from Japan, you leave the same, you arrive on the same day that you leave. But when you come back, you lose a day. So she will leave on Wednesday night, arrive there Wednesday night, and then start her summit meeting on Thursday and Friday, and be back, leave on Friday. That means she gets back on Sunday, and then back to business. She is really a terrific worker, and it's beginning to show on her. It's beginning to strain some of the staff that she has, the cabinet officials as well. But she's really on a bend to achieve a lot. This visit in Washington, D.C. with President Trump is really sequential. We're going to be watching that and reporting it to you this time next week. We will be able to, but there's just a lot going on. Please give me 30 minutes of your time, and then we can hit the Q&A and wrap it up and get out on the waves. Maya?
Okay, thank you, Timothy. And before we continue with the details, to everybody watching us
I
or
love when
who
you
will
do
be
that.
watching
I
us,
can't hear you.
oh,
Wave your hand if you're okay. I
I
just need to sign off and sign
yes.
back in.
I'm
Okay,
okay.
Bella.
All right, please. Yes. So thank you very much for being with us. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow us on the social media that you're watching these briefings on. Also, help us spread the word by sharing them with friends, colleagues, bosses, and maybe subordinates as well, employees and family members, if you find them informative and helpful. Because we try to do summaries basically of everything that has, or most of the things that happen during the week. And so thank you very much for this. Also, there is a newsletter. The synopsis of the briefing goes out during the week after the synopsis is over. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can let me know and I'll add you to the list, or you can find us on Substack. And then remember that there is also a movie night on March 31st. And if you are in Tokyo, we would love to have you there and to watch a movie with you as well. So thank you very much for your patience. And Timothy, once again, it is over to you. It's politics and politics in Japan.
Thank you very much, Maya. Getting to the synopsis, I received a lot of comments this last week about the synopsis, and it might be because it was particularly good, or it might be that people are just stumbling upon it for the first time. But after the briefing, we kind of encapsulate what we talked about, including what questions were asked, not about the answers to the questions, because those sometimes go a little bit lengthy. But please subscribe if you can't join all the time and you just don't have the time on Sunday mornings to watch or to download on YouTube. Please check in with the synopsis. And also about the movie night and about 6 years of doing this, there is no cohesive community of Japan hands. There used to be, but there isn't one really existing anymore. So our effort here is just to talk to people who are interested in Japanese politics, who are engaged in it, to help them kind of keep a leg up and to know what's going on in maybe a more in-depth area. There are very few resources where you can discover what's going on in Japanese politics. We hope to be one of those for you, but also to help foster this community building of Japan hands. So please tune in. Please join us for the movie night. Please subscribe to the synopsis. Enough about that. The Japanese government must pass the budget every year on April 1st. This is the seminal goal of every diet session that starts in January and runs for 150 days. They must pass the budget by April 1st to fund things going from April 1st forward. And if they don't, then they need to have a supplemental budget to cover that gap. Last year, under the Ishiba administration, they missed the deadline by 3 or 4 days, so it wasn't that serious. This year, the prime minister, well, we had an election, and then we reappointed the prime minister. She kept the cabinet intact, but it ate into the 150 days, and it really compressed the time that the lower house has to review the budget. And that's the crunch that we're in now. We had the election. It was a snap election that was called by the prime minister, unexpected, in the late part of January. So that election period runs maybe 12 days. And then the diet comes in session. She delayed holding the diet opening for a couple of days. So it's really a compressed time. There was less than 3 weeks for the lower house to consider the diet. And the powers that be decided that they would spend 60 hours, 58 hours debating the budget before passing it to the upper house, take 2 weeks to do that, and then pass the budget on April 1st. 50 hours, about 58 hours spent on the budget debate is the quickest in Japanese post-war history. It hasn't been done that quickly before. Under Mr. Abe, I think it was maybe 65 hours, which was also very quick. But this generates maybe unnecessary animosity for the opposition. But in this particular case, the opposition is so small that all they can do is throw pebbles. And they are. They're throwing pebbles. They know that the prime minister is going to Washington, D.C. They're trying to create a bit of a controversy there. They're trying to extract concessions. They're trying to reveal to their constituents that they wield power when in fact they really don't. From the prime minister's perspective, she doesn't want to have a bum rush. She doesn't want to push it through. She doesn't want to appear to be dictatorial or too bossy. But she also wants to go to Washington, D.C., looking strong and having a consensus of the LDP government. Nobody has had what she has. Mr. Abe never had what she has now. She is a consequential prime minister. She is one of the most consequential prime ministers already. And this visit to Washington, D.C. is really important. And her opposition knows that. So they're kind of threatening to embarrass her or to delay things, and she's going to go to Washington, D.C. There was a push by the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tamaki's group. Well, we don't want to pass the budget on Friday. How about on Monday? And if you push it off until Monday, then we'll vote for it. And she considered this throughout this last week and eventually decided, no, it's got to be on Friday. I don't want to delay it. It needs to be on Friday so that the upper house has at least 2 weeks to debate and to consider it and then hopefully pass it. And he dug in his heels, and all of the opposition parties voted against passage of the diet on Friday. But since the LDP holds a supermajority in the lower house, they passed it. It wasn't rammed through, but you could say it was kind of rammed through. The opposition party, all of them, want to say it was rammed through, and they're so mad, and steam is coming out of their ears, and they're pounding the table. It's a tempest in a teapot. They're just trying to exercise some control over the situation. In the upper house, so they're threatening, so you push it through in the lower house because you have a majority. In the upper house, you don't. And there are some difficulties and some complexities in the upper house with the LDP as well. The person who is the Kanjicho, the leader of the LDP within the upper house, is not a real favorite of the prime minister. And if he can score any points to his favor, and sometimes you just threaten scoring the points so that you get some sort of benefit, backroom benefit, and you ease things through. This is politics, and this is how the opposition, this is how everybody plays. You know, I could hurt you, but I won't. if you approve that bridge or if you do this or that. So there's a lot of horse trading that we don't really see a lot of. In any event, the prime minister knows this. She passed it through, and now the bill goes to the upper house tomorrow on Monday. They have less than 3 weeks to debate that. This is the shortest in history. Once again, the lower house and the upper house. And they're saying that they can't do it. And in fact, a motion was put forward to um, criticize and fire the chairman of the budget committee in the lower house as a consequence of this lack of time to consider it. And that will probably, he'll probably resign, but the deal is already done. Now it goes to the upper house. And within, it's the upper house, tomorrow is the 16th. That's less than, that's 2 weeks and a day, 2 weeks and 2 days to pass it. And those aren't all work days, right? So even this next week, it's only 4 work days that the upper house budget committee can consider that. So it's really a crammed schedule. And that's why the trip for the prime minister going to Washington, D.C. and coming back, if she comes back victorious, she hasn't sold the farm, she hasn't committed to President Trump that, yes, there'll be boots on the ground. The Japanese Navy will escort these tankers. We will be, viscerally engaged in protecting the Hormuz Strait. Yeah, that's not going to sell. That's not going to sell with the Japanese public. It's not going to sell with the opposition. The bill would not pass in the upper house. On the other hand, if she comes back and she's the 550 billion investment that Japan has committed to the United States, the discussions revealed some of the benefits that are going to inure to Japan as a consequence of that, as a direct consequence, and as a quick consequence of that. Then it's in her favor. The likelihood of passing the budget by April 1st is heightened. But the LDP, as we all know, it doesn't have a majority. It needs Ishin, but even with Ishin, they're lacking 4 or 5 votes. And where are they going to get that? If the Democratic Party for the People doesn't come along, they're going to want concessions. But if they don't come along and it pushes it over, it's going to be difficult for the prime minister. She's going to have egg on her face, but not too much. And the reason for that is this. In the budget, the lower house has primacy. That means they get the first shot of it. They pass it to the upper house. And if the upper house doesn't pass it or they don't like it, within 30 days, the lower house can still override it and pass it and make the budget. So that means if the lower house passes to the upper house doesn't like it, like this time appears, and they drag their feet. By April 11th, it comes back down to the lower house and they can pass it. So the demand to have a supplemental budget, because we need a supplemental budget, because if we don't pass it, the government will close down. It's only an 11-day period. Last year, it was a 3 or 4 day period. Nobody got that torqued about it. So it's if she can run it and she can close it, she looks really strong. The LDP looks like it's in control of things. So keeping the opposition non-furious, they're pretending to be furious now, and then that moves up to the upper house. It could delay things, but it's not going to cause a breach of the power of the LDP in the lower house. So it's just a kind of an exercise, I think, to embarrass her or to threaten to embarrass her at a time that she's really a little bit vulnerable. So her credibility is getting a bit tested at this time of the year. And the pressure is actually beginning to show. If you're watching TV, you probably not, but on NHK, they air the budget hearings. The prime minister is not taking all of the bullets. She's passing it off to her cabinet ministers. And the ratio of questions that she is responding to compared to previous prime ministers is a little bit low. And when she is answering, she lacks a little bit of that crispness and that dynamism that she had earlier. And you can tell that she's she's a little bit slow. She still has the bandage around her hand, and as I said, um, she had a dinner on Wednesday night with 8 ambassadors from Middle East countries. They're all invited. They're having dinner, a formal dinner inside the prime minister's residence. That's a big deal. That's 8 limousines coming in, people dressed up. These are big guys to have dinner with the prime minister at this critical point in time. She canceled. So she didn't show up. Her number two in this situation, her number two is the chief cabinet secretary. You might think that since it's diplomacy, it's ambassadors, it would be the foreign minister, but he's already got his schedule that's been established for weeks and weeks, unmovable, even in light of the prime minister canceling a dinner. So the number two in this situation frequently is almost invariably is the chief cabinet secretary, who keeps his schedule a little bit open just in case that sort of thing happens. But that's, it is significant that she canceled that out. Then that was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, knockdown, drag out, past the budget, and now she's preparing for a departure in 3 days to Washington, D.C. that she knows, and not only that, but he knows that this meeting in Washington, D.C. is seminal for her. The latest polling puts her at around 50% right now, so you can tell that the polls come out not every day, but on a regular basis. The recent poll is relatively recent. There are 2 of them that came out, and they show a diminution in her support, and it's reflective of her performance on the diet floor, some of the other things that are going on, what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz, and I think rising prices, currency weakness, and this anxiety about the Middle East war really weighs on the public, and they're looking for direction from her. They are hopeful. They haven't been quite let down, but you can tell, her work ethic is really serious, and I think she's testing the limits there. And so we'll see how that pans out. But we should wish her the best of luck. This is a seminal time for Japan as well. There's a lot going on this last week. There's a lot going to be happening in the next week too. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. The yen now has some really serious developments this last week. It was 152 as we talked about earlier in the week, 152 level, and it shot up to 159. I think it closed out on Friday at 159.9 or something like that, touching 160. 160 seems to be the trigger point. That is the point where the Japanese government says we can't tolerate this. We import more than 90% of our energy needs. We import a majority of our foodstuffs. Those payments are almost all in US dollars. So the Japanese have to purchase dollars in order to make those payments. So when import costs rise, it immediately affects the yen, it affects the economy, it affects inflation. So that's what's going on right now. And what's happening with the yen is not just cosmetic. It's really very structural, and it has a long tail on it. So sometimes it's somewhat volatile. I think the United States and Japan want to work together so that they tap down volatility. Volatility doesn't help. It does help when the Japanese government invests trillions of yen to support the yen. That attacks the volatility, and that usually sticks. But it's a not a very good way. It's an expensive way to tap it down. But oil is going to become more expensive. We already know that. LNG is going to become more expensive. Grain imports and industrial inputs are all now going to be more expensive. We can see that writing on the wall. So that leads directly to consumer prices. And so the finance minister, Satsuki Katayama, was already discussing the market on Thursday and Friday. She was in discussions with the Treasury Secretary on Thursday. And the last intervention was maybe 2024 when the yen hit about 160, 161. Japan came in twice. They came in within a week, two times very strongly, trillions of yen. And, nobody likes market manipulation. This is an example of that. And they're trying to avoid that. This time, I sense that there's a lot more collaboration now with the Trump administration and the Takaichi administration than there has been in the past. So I think these discussions will carry on in this next week and with Trump. And I think she's actually traveling with the prime minister. It's not a huge delegation that's going with her. Her chief cabinet secretary is traveling with her, but it's interesting. The prime minister is not the head of state. The emperor is the head of state. So when you have a visit like this with the prime minister visiting the United States, it's not a state visit. The state visit means the head of state is visiting, but it's being treated as a state visit. Although she's only there for 2 days, with everything else going on, it's like a state visit. This is very important, and I think you'll see a lot of pomp and circumstance. There'll be a state dinner. There'll be a joint briefing. I think the briefing is scheduled for Thursday. Then there's some bilateral talks that are going on. Then they get on the plane Friday night and come back. But the Middle East conflict has really pushed the security back into the center of Japanese politics. I think that will be a main discussion point. And we all know that Japan imports 90% of its oil needs through the Strait of Hormuz. So it's, any kind of disruption there is going to immediately affect Japan's economy. And we are in the grasp of it right now. So how that rolls out, how that develops, it's happening today. I'm not being able to report on current news, stuff that happened up until yesterday. I've got a little bit of that, but there are things that are going on right now that are going to have an impact on that. So to soften this impact I think you could say under President Trump's leadership or directive, allied countries are now releasing strategic reserves. Japan also joined in that initiative to diminish the rising prices that we anticipate. So the Japanese government, using private sources and government sources, has released about 80 million barrels from the strategic reserves. That's the largest release that Japan has ever undertaken. And the goal here is to keep gasoline maybe at a 170. If you're watching that, if you drive a car, or if you're watching that as a market barometer, it's touching that right now. Without government support and the subsidies, it would be shooting maybe to 200 yen, at least 180. So intervention, if intervention happens, it will happen because the price can't be tapped down. So we're looking for that. And when the Japanese government does intervention, they need to purchase more dollars, and those dollars are assets that Japanese hold in U.S. Holdings, or maybe in bonds or securities. So if there's a rush to get more U.S. dollars, it could have a tumbling effect in the U.S. economy as well. I'd like to now shift to the defense policy. We know Shinjiro Koizumi is the defense minister. It looks like he's grown into a man suddenly, and he's actually looking really very stately. He's walking erect. He's sending the right verbal messages, and he's I think poised. They're preparing him to be the next front runner for prime minister. I think definitely he will be prime minister the next go around when Miss Takaichi decides she doesn't want to do it anymore, or somebody else decides. But he's really looking good. And you might recall that for years, Tokyo has been attempting to negotiate, and Japan, the United States has been pushing, buy more stuff from the United States, buy systems, buy Aegis, buy the missile defense and the Iron Dome, participate in that. And they finally decided on buying 400 Tomahawks. This was quite a while ago. Arrival started this last week, and Mr. Koizumi has been in the press talking about the distribution of these Tomahawks. These are advanced. These are the super advanced weapons. They have a 1,600 mile, 160 mile kilometer range, and they're land-based, and they're also sea-based on the Aegis destroyers. They're being loaded now on one of Japan's newest destroyers, and it will go through live fire drills in the United States, or maybe in near Hawaii, over the summer. So this march towards taking on more significant responsibility for not only Japan's defense, but regional defense, this first island chain defense, including South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Guam, Okinawa, obviously. And now last week, Taiwan said, we want to be an active participant too. And not only that, but the United States has invested, 11 billion in our defense spending, which really torques President Xi and China. So this is all beginning to coagulate, and it's Japan is trying to put that best foot forward, and I think you're going to see some of that coming out with the discussions with Trump. So you can anticipate that. Some analysts are predicting that he will be asking for support in escort in the Strait of Hormuz. I kind of don't think the Japanese population picking up on that, but he will ask for certain things that the Japanese self-defense forces can do, including purchase of more advanced weapons, and possibly participate not only in the Golden Dome, but also in the Board of Peace. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, maybe we can talk about that in the Q&A. But the meeting in Washington, D.C. and the Board of Peace discussion that, he will ask, Japan to join in on, he'll ask more for a commitment. The 2% needs to stay at 2% for defense spending, or maybe can you kick it up to 3%? She's got her own issues which prevent her from making grander commitments. But I think for the United States needs a stable, strong, assertive Japan. It needs it in this region if the United States, number one, is pulling back America first, make America great again, if that's actually the way it's going, or alternatively, even if the United States is moving more aggressively on Venezuela, on Cuba, on Taiwan, on Iran, this begins to format. Still, the United States needs a strong and resilient Japan. And I think that's the direction that we're going. You can see that in the tea leaves. If you're only watching from time to time, it can kind of slip past you. So it's something to keep an eye on. The diplomatic calendar, as I said earlier, has been very light this last week, 2 weeks ago. But the president or the prime minister has been involved in a lot of other things. And can you imagine having a request? They're usually 3-4 months in advance. The president is making a tour of Asia. He's visiting 3 countries. He would like to have an audience with the prime minister on this window. Do you think you can arrange it? And that just is a natural part of it. That time has been preserved. She hasn't been interrupted too much over this very delicate period. Thank God for that. She did receive the Prime Minister of Canada last week. He was here on Thursday and Friday. They did have a dinner together. But it's been kind of light now. The ambassador's dinner is somewhat unfortunate, but they're not heads of state, so it's a little bit different. But we have 2 visits now coming at the end of this month. We've got the president of France, Macron, visiting March 31st to April 2nd. Can you imagine that? Right at the timing of the budget closing and the turmoil that we anticipate is going to be there. And the president of Indonesia will be here from the 29th to the 31st. So, she's already got her pants full of ants already. And having these kinds of things happen too. I just, the amount of work and effort that goes into somebody like the prime minister, she lives right next door. She stays there. She's taking care of her husband as well, who who is frail and ill. I don't know if he's bedridden. I think he's in a wheelchair, but he has to take care. She has to take care of him too. So as we step back and look at this broader picture, Japan is just navigating several pressures simultaneously, not just the prime minister, but Japan as a nation, diplomatically, economically, geopolitically. There's just so much going on. And this diet fight over the national budget, it is really important. It's a distraction, but it's an important distraction. It's one of the components that we have to get through. Constitutionally, the government needs that. At the same time, the yen is weakening. Key energy markets are volatile. The defense policy is evolving. There's more demand. There's more expectation. And this pivotal meeting in Washington, D.C. in exactly 5 days, or 4 days now, is just it's just ripe with anticipation and not fear, but something is going to happen here, and we're just at that critical point. Plus, it's becoming spring, so it does give you a sense of hope and being forward looking about this. And I think with this prime minister, you can expect a lot. If this was Mr. Ishiba or Mr. Suga, it's just the whole atmosphere, the whole texture, the chemistry is completely different. So cherry blossoms will begin opening on Friday if they obey the Meteorological Agency. In Washington, D.C., it's about a week later. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but the tidal basin will be full of blossoms in any event. And the fiscal year will end this month. So today is the 15th. It's the middle of the month, Maya. We are going to survive another month, one way or the other, in 15 days. And the budget will close, I suspect, on, if they're going to tweak her nose, they're going to tweak it just a little bit. It'll be a couple of days. But if she does close the budget in the upper house, that is a real feather in her cap. So let's watch out for that and see how the Washington meeting goes. Let's take a good look at what's happening with the yen. Is it going to stabilize? It's 159. It looks like it's touching. You can see that there's pressures being put to keep it down. And that's a coordinated effort. Let's see what happens there. Can they hold the dam back for a while? And let's see how the Prime Minister does, Ms. Takaichi does, in Washington, D.C. I think she's going to come back looking really. There'll be a lot of news out of it. President Trump will make a couple of announcements too. But it's really a fabulous time to be in Japanese politics, and I really welcome and appreciate you joining us every week here. And you too, Maya. Thank you very much for this idea you had 6 years ago. Back to
No,
you.
thank you. Thank you for including me.
Reluctantly.
Reluctantly, I know, because of all those screen butterflies or whatever you call them, right? Every
I
morning,
do, yeah.
Sunday. Yes,
Every Sunday I get butterflies. God, I have to deal
yes.
with Maya.
Ooh, yeah, that's the scariest part of the week, I know. Well, to everybody who stayed with us, thank you very much. And we are moving to the Q&A session now, so please feel free to share your comments and questions. But please also remember that this is a briefing about Japanese politics. And if your questions and comments are related to Japanese politics and, well, the region, then we will address them. But anything else is a little bit out of scope, and then, yeah, we probably can talk about those other things when we meet in person.
At movie night.
At movie night, indeed. That's March 31st this month. And well, so Timothy, you touched upon this, I believe, in the beginning of the briefing, but still there are a couple of questions here, and I would like you to answer them. Well, everybody knows that the very first questions every morning on Sunday come from Byron. And well, let's see what they are. Listen carefully, please. What prevents the regular budget from being passed before March 31st and then one or two supplementary budgets depending on how long the Iran war drags on?
What prevents it from being passed?
Yes, by March 31st.
Okay. What prevents it from being passed is basically, the LDP does not have 50% of the seats in the upper house.
Mm.
And in order to embarrass or to gain concessions, the opposition parties gang together, or maybe we know that those opposition parties, they're not going to vote for it. They're screaming, they want their concessions. They're not going to get them. They're too small. The opposition parties are too small. The largest opposition party in the upper house is the Constitutional Democratic Party. We have the Central Reform Party in the lower house. It's the amalgamation of the Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito. That is not the story in the upper house. In the upper house, they didn't do that. They didn't go along with that. So you still have the Constitutional Democratic Party. They have the largest percentage in the upper house, and it's it's maybe 7%, right? And they can join with the other opposition parties collectively to make maybe maybe 53% or something like that. But they can demand that the government do things, or the prime minister promises them things so that their constituents benefit, or maybe they personally benefit. And then they'll vote. So, for example, Mr. Tamaki said, well, I know you want to pass it on Friday, but I tell you what, if you delay until Monday, I'll vote. But if you don't, I'm going to oppose it. And what does that mean? That just means, let me show that I have some ability to influence you. It doesn't impact anything other than that. So it's like that, but it'll be like that on steroids in the upper house, because the upper house, the opposition parties can combine and they can delay it. They can say, we want this, this, and this. And of course, the LDP will say, well, we can do this and this, but we can't, we're not in a position to accept your third demand. And they say, oh, okay, well, then we're not going to. And so the government and the prime minister needs to balance the kind of hit I'm going to take by looking like I'm dictatorial and pushing this bill through compared to giving the concession and losing this and getting the flack in like 6 months because of the decision that I made now. That's the balance of the conversation. So yes, she needs to get a couple of people. She needs actually 4 or 5 votes in the upper house to ram it through. And she just doesn't want to do that. She didn't really ram it through in the lower house, but that's what they're saying. You rammed it through. You should have given us more time. You should have created a supplemental budget. Sorry, I went long on that, but I hope that's responsive.
Thank you. And well, the next question is, if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed for much of this year, can Japan manage its energy needs through alternative means? And
No,
what are those means? No,
no, they
right.
can't. Yeah. 90%, 95%, you can't.
No, they cannot indeed. And I believe that, well, there are certainly now moves towards, once again, dealing with Russia and, right, a return towards deals with Russia, because I believe also that there was some news yesterday that the United States is or has just lifted some of the sanctions on Russian exports, and maybe that's one of the ways Japan will look to and maybe take. But we have a question from Percival, and then he says, "Do you recall a similar situation with Japan in the middle of oil crisis and conflict like we are having now, and
Yeah.
how Japan dealt with that? How do you think Japan should prepare now?"
So I'm not sure. Percival is relatively new, but he's very active in the Q&A, isn't he?
Yes, very
Yeah,
nice.
thank you for that, Percival. So I'm not sure about how much you know, or if it's a quiz, or if you know what Japan did with supplying and being in a support role for the United States the last time this happened. It caused a lot of controversy, and all you need is one SDF, self-defense forces individual, to be harmed, or killed, and the Japanese would just go crazy. This hasn't happened. Even if there's an injury for live fire drills or with joint exercises with the U.S. Marines in Okinawa, it really causes major concern. I mean, Japan is almost allergic to this kind of conflict involvement. So what they did in the past was they played a support role. They were providing fuel and supplies in a support role. It was pretty significant, but it wasn't involved. They also sent, non-military to not Somalia, but what's the base in southern Africa, where they do have a SDF presence there on peacekeeping, and they do contribute, but they don't contribute, arms. They contribute, defense weapons, helmets, vests, medical supplies, that sort of thing. So I anticipate in this next round, they'll be asked to similarly support, and probably at the level, because there is precedent. Japan loves precedent. Anything above precedent is impossible because it's never happened before, so it's impossible. But precedent establishes kind of the baseline, and I think you're going to see a request for, and probably Japan's performance on, a couple of those requests. I don't think it would include escorting vessels. There are about 58 vessels bound for Japan that are locked up right now, and I guess when they will require some sort of protection and escort. But I think one of the other discussions that is likely to happen is, Japan, you need to pay for that. This isn't free. We're providing escort. We're going to escort these tankers out. We'll escort the ones for Korea. We'll escort the ones for, to make sure they get through. But you should pony up for that. And I think that'll be part of the discussion.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Greg. The Japan Self-Defense Force has a base in Djibouti. Yes.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you, Greg, for
Thank
this.
you, Greg.
Yes. Very much appreciated. And then we've got also a little bit of extension to the news today by Hiroko-san. She says Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi appointed former Chief of the Joint Staff Keishu Yoshida, a senior officer for the uniformed ranks, as president of the National Defense Academy. For many years, the position had traditionally been held by civilians, such as scholars or government officials. This marks the first appointment of a uniformed self-defense forces officer to the post since 1965, an exceptionally rare decision in roughly 6 decades. What are the reasons and the intended objectives of this?
Well, I think, yeah, a great question. I can't answer authoritatively, but just looking at the dynamics, it looks like a good move. If Japan is serious about moving forward and being serious about it, you put a military man to oversee this kind of military complex, essentially a military complex, training and white papers and doing a lot of things. I'm not sure exactly the full breadth of the responsibilities, but yeah, you can see, and it's not just this one. This is like one of those tea leaves that you look at. All of these things are kind of moving in that direction, and I think, going a little bit more expansively, I think, should the prime minister come back victorious and the budget passes on April 1st or thereabouts, yeah, you're going to see the shifting of gears, and people are going to start talking about constitutional revision. I think it's just inescapable, and it's more likely under this prime minister than it has been under the last 5.
Well, but don't you also think that still the anti-constitutional change sentiment here continues to be strong? And with Prime Minister Takaichi's rankings eventually coming down, don't you think that it's going to be difficult to do that again?
Absolutely. Absolutely, given the status quo that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
But between now and when that begins to happen, when that conversation comes up, there'll be a couple of trigger events. And one of those trigger events is like in Djibouti, and the opposition, the forces against the United States and against this kind of dominion in South Africa, they know that the Japanese are there, and they know that should one of those soldiers be injured, Japan will go crazy. That will damage the United States. That will damage that kind of alliance. So it's really difficult because anybody that's Japanese in that area has got a target on their back. How can we disrupt this? Similarly, should something happen to any defense forces or any Japanese vessel, or there could be a flight mishap or something like that, that's not a small possibility in a conflict like this. Then the conversation shifts, and you need only one trigger event for that volatility to start.
Right, but as you say, volatility is there, and those trigger events can go in both directions. They
Right.
can trigger sentiment, an increase in sentiment towards constitutional revision, and at the same time, they could do the opposite, right, as a opposition to that. So we don't know what happens, but because I remember also instances when there were Japanese citizens, not really military, but citizens who were killed in Nigeria, I believe, and then there were some forces there at that point of time, self-defense forces, as far as I remember, right? And there was sentiment against actually sending the self-defense forces out of the country at the point.
Maya, you remember when on TV they had some Japanese journalist beheaded? They cut his throat and they filmed it
Yes,
on TV. You remember that?
I do.
That was a trigger event that just sent shockwaves, right? And as a consequence of that, the foreign ministry did move, and Japan lurched in that direction. Most people don't know this, but Iran holds several Japanese hostages, and they are under lock and key. They've been arrested for several months. Japan has been quietly seeking their release, but something like that could happen too. I'm not saying that they're going to be killed or executed or something like that, but Iran does have some. They everybody admits this, that Japan does have some game, and how this is going to play out, it's not going to be a cakewalk. So you just, it could roll. It could roll and envelope everybody. It could turn into World War III, which a lot of people are very fearful of and predicting. So let's see how it goes. I'm hopeful that it will be a short campaign, and cooler heads will prevail. But I think ultimately the goal of the United States is control of the Hormuz Straits permanently, to occupy that, to occupy Venezuela, to take over Cuba, to be muscular here in Asia, so that China, without the flow of oil from the Middle East, just doesn't do what it really would like to do, except for the fact that there's an alliance of like-minded countries that don't want Taiwan to be separated and evolved back into China.
Well, Taiwan is half there, halfway there. I mean, we don't have to go there already because there are always two sides to the truth, right? Depending on which side of the line you are. But anyway, so, well, and we cannot also disregard the fact that if there wasn't an attack on Iran, the Hormuz state wouldn't be in the situation it is right now, right?
Not
So,
today.
not today, right?
Right.
So, so let's try to see things, from different sides and have different perspectives here, because we don't want to really lean only to one side, right? Okay, so we have another question this time from Peter Pan. So thank you very much for tuning in again. So what about the price of rice? Has the government already given up to do something about this? Because the prices remain high, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
So we are approaching spring. So the winter harvest of rice, it's just non-existent here. If if they run out of stockpiles, then they're going to start importing. I think they're at the tail end of their stockpiles. Rice will be produced. The first harvest, I think, will be in midsummer. So it does take a while. The fields are not even flooded yet. You're traveling. Let's say you're taking the trains anywhere in Tohoku or even from Narita or south on the Shinkansen. The fields aren't flooded. They're being prepared, but they're not flooded yet. So you can't anticipate the surplus being replenished anytime soon. I haven't heard what the situation is, what the stockpile is, how well it's holding up. But it's always the price and demand and supply. Um, everything is overshadowing what the price of rice is, but um, I don't have a current estimate on that. If you do, Peter Pan, please share it with us. And if you key it up to Maya, then I'll spend more time on it in our next briefing.
Right. Yes, because we somehow forgot. I mean, the news forgot about this issue while there is so much else going on. And for some reason now nobody talks about Taiwan and China, right? Everything is focused on the conflict in the Middle East. So we'll see
So
what.
there is a little bit of talk there, though. I mean, the president of Taiwan was at the baseball games last week. Remember?
Yes, you told us about that.
And it also turns out in the questioning in the Diet this last week that the chief cabinet secretary also went to the games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the same game as the president of Taiwan, right? So Japan is not supposed to recognize. Nobody's supposed to recognize Taiwan. He's not supposed to visit. This is his first visit. This is his personal first visit as president. But the president of Taiwan has not visited Japan for 15 years at least, maybe longer than that. So the fact that he came in a professional capacity, he's not visiting with the prime minister, but he went to a baseball game, and the chief cabinet secretary happened to have gone as well. That's we're creeping, just pretend. No, it's not diplomatic, but we were going to the baseball game. So things are happening. And yeah, a lot of it is just not being talked about. There's a lot going on that's not being talked about because, everybody's afraid of what's going on with the yen, with the economy, with inflation and Hormuz.
Yes, just to go back a little bit to an earlier question here. So how there certainly have been crises before in the Middle East, and we remember the oil crisis and the conflicts there as well. So how did Japan deal in at those times?
Okay. So I think the question is that your question personally, Maya?
No, it is a question from just let me yes from Percival.
Okay. It's a good question, and I think what's behind it is what can I anticipate? We're approaching spring. This kind of conflict, if it's resolved, it will be resolved probably within the next 3 months. But if it's not, we're in the middle of summer. What's going to happen? How they're releasing stockpiles now. If they release stockpiles now, they're gambling that it's going to be finished in 90 days. If it's not finished in 90 days, what the hell do? Your stockpiles are now empty. What the hell, right? So there would be rationing. That means that filling up your car, you would be restricted every third Wednesday based on your license plate number. And for trucks, you can only get a certain amount of diesel, and it's being reserved. And air travel is going to be restricted, and plastics and toilet paper. You remember the toilet paper rush, Maya?
Well, I don't think
Before
it
your
has
time.
right.
It's funny, but I guess it takes a lot of paper and energy and cooking and shifting and then processing to make toilet paper. And so there was a run on toilet paper during the energy crisis. It was huge. It was in the news. People were grabbing and they were reaching over their shoulders, and it's just something. But yeah, something like that is potentially likely to happen.
Well, but I also believe that during the last crisis, well, in the Middle East, it happened maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Then Japan did negotiate with the United States because the United States imposed sanctions on Iran so that, well, Iranian oil couldn't be exported, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but then Japan basically negotiated with the United States so that they could continue importing Iranian
That's right.
oil. And also, I believe that they tried to diversify through the Sakhalin projects. And it's not just oil, right? Because the Sakhalin projects are about gas, natural,
LNG. That's right.
yeah, natural liquefied gas. But also, as I see things happening right now, I mean, even the United States is talking, or probably they have just lifted the sanctions on exports from Russia, oil
Yeah.
exports from. So Japan is going to follow suit because we know how things happen there. What
Yeah.
the dynamic between Japan and the United States is, and probably if Japan cannot import Iranian oil due to the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, they're probably going to start importing oil from Russia, not only liquefied gas.
Um, yeah, I think if they start importing oil, it will be from someplace else. LNG is a different story. And the
Mhm.
energy mix, yes, LNG provides a huge energy mix. Oil is the big daddy, though. And I think it would probably come from elsewhere through the support of the United States. I don't think the United States is yet in a position to want to help Russia by allowing that. And Russia has its own needs as well, and plus it has friends who need oil more than I mean they're friendlier countries to Russia than Japan is. When this issue came up, Maya, when you raised it right after the briefing, I thought you were going to enter to nuclear, but you went to LNG. LNG
Well,
is okay. Let me just finish that thought. The nuclear, I thought, is it's a longer runway to get to it, but I think that that's probably Japan needs to extract itself from this dependence on Hormuz and the oil out of the Middle East. It's too volatile. Japan's economy and the existence of basically the nation is dependent on it. They just don't like that sort of thing. So energy, it's 15 years, Maya. This last week, 15-year anniversary from the triple disaster that we went through. You were here. You went
I
through it
was,
as well, right?
yes.
So nobody wants to go through that again. Nobody wants to suffer through that. But I think nuclear is really the way. But we Japan has developed this understandable allergy to it. But you've got to cut to the chase if you want to guarantee your survival, and you can do that only through your own independence from external sources. So I think that's the way to go. But yes, in the short term, they've got to find oil from someplace else.
Well, they do. And it's not only the energy industry, because I believe that a lot of people have eventually realized that Japan cannot rely on renewables only. So they need nuclear.
Mhm.
But I mean, oil is used not only for energy, it's used in the chemical industry and
and
so many
and
products,
medical.
and
Yeah,
yeah, medical as well, and everywhere else. So it's not just the energy mix here when it comes to oil, right? And of course, Japan can diversify through nuclear, getting the nuclear back, and renewables as well, of course. But it's not just that; it's much
yeah,
more when it comes to oil. All right, thank you. And we've got also Percival saying that Japan has the world's largest reserves of oil compared to other countries that don't even have a month. We have time to find alternatives sources of oil. And yes, I mean, people in well, Kasumigaseki nowadays and the government itself, they're calling actually private companies who also hold some reserves of oil
yeah. That's
to
right.
release those reserves so that the country can go through this crisis until they find other alternatives. And I believe, knowing how the Japanese mindset is and how culture works here, those companies will probably release the
They
reserve.
contribute, sure.
They
So
will
Japan
contribute.
released Japan released 80 million barrels of oil.
Mm-hmm.
About 25% of that was from private reserves.
Right.
So yes, they are in close contact. They're not. It's just the way it works, as you said. The culture and the way business and government work together. There is an affinity and almost an innate a closeness there. So yes, about 25% of that was from private reserves, which would include like Idemitsu, some of the oil
Mhm.
refineries. They have their own private reserves, and then the Japanese government has a huge reserve, as was pointed out.
Right. Okay. Thank you for this. And we have gone through the questions and some of the comments. Some of the comments are related to Mr. Carney, Canadian Prime Minister, I believe. But yes, he did visit here, but there isn't that much, of.
Nobody cared.
Right. Yes.
I
So
apologize for those Canadians that are here, but
I'm so.
nobody. It really didn't raise much of an eyebrow.
Not really. And then,
Yeah.
once again, thank you for being with us, Timothy. Your effort is once again very much appreciated. I know that you're also eager to go back to sailing and enjoy the sea today again. It's a beautiful
It's
day here
it's a
in
beautiful
Tokyo.
day.
Yes. All
What
right.
in closing up, Maya, I've got to say I can't let this week pass without mentioning. Um, we were Everybody knows who Bunshun is, right?
Oh yes, yes, of course. The magazine.
Bunshun, right? The
Hmm.
magazine. It's called a rag. It's not. It's kind of a flimsy magazine. It's
Hmm.
sold weekly. It goes on the newsstand every Thursday, and it's read vociferously by everybody who wants to know all the gossip, what's going on with the movie stars and stuff like that. The main piece that was released this week, many people, the Japanese government doesn't have the CIA. What they have instead is Bunshun. Bunshun digs up everything, and it's
Okay.
vociferous for information. It will pay for information. It will get information. Their top story here is about a member of the lower house, education minister, in fact, caught and being revealed as having sex in his diet office for an extended period of time, not in one setting, I mean, but as a pattern being discovered and being revealed this week. The prime minister was quizzed about it. Are you going to let this guy go? He's been sleeping with some married woman in the diet office. Are you aware of this? His personal, what's going on, Miss Prime Minister? Can you imagine how not ridiculous, but just how wow this is? Are we in a fabulous industry or not? Stuff like this, Bunshun, the investigative reporting that they do, this kind of revelation of somebody sleeping in the minister of state, is that just
Yeah, but well, it's once again, I believe, the opposition not willing to give up easily, right? Because they do not have anything else at the moment to show power with. And of course, honestly, I don't know whether this is the opposition pushing for that kind of stuff in Bunshun, but
no? It sells. It
it,
sells.
it tells,
Solicitousness sells,
unfortunately, yes,
and
yes,
it is a minister of education. Can you believe that?
mm, yeah, too bad,
You
yes.
get all the news here.
All the news here. All right. Okay, Timothy, let's move to
Thank
something
you
more
very
pleasant.
much.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
So we've
Japanese
got, yes,
politics.
Mario says, Timothy, your new hairstyle looks really smart. Thank you, Mario, for this, because Timothy is very particular when it comes to his hairstyle. And
My
yes,
rouge. And
yeah,
do I look haggard, Mario? You
who
can't
knows?
tell. I haven't eaten for 8 days, so
Yeah, that's a lot of a strain. Okay, to
yes.
everybody so who watched us, thank you very much indeed. Apologies for the last topic. Um, yes, and please do say hello to Timothy, even well to support him because he hasn't eaten for 8 days. It's not an easy thing to do at all. And he's still here with us, willing to help and to keep us informed. Again, I wish you all a happy Sunday and also a productive week ahead. Yes,
4 days.
4 day. I can see how happy you are, dear Timothy, that it's not a full working week. Right. Okay, and we'll see you next once again on Sunday at 8:20 in the morning. If you can wake up, if not, you can watch the replay, of course. And remember to subscribe and let us know that you have been here by liking and also sharing these briefings with friends and colleagues and acquaintances. That's all for today. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Maya.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, everybody.
Timothy.